Hi everyone, here's our first video on the Protestant Reformation. The left side will be explained at the end of the video. So far we've been learning about the Renaissance. This is not a break from the Renaissance. The Protestant Reformation happens during the Renaissance, so that's important to understand. So there were people that had Protestant ideas first, but these are the main people to really act upon them. So we'll start off with the Zwinglian Reformation. This man Zwingli was from Switzerland, and he was a priest in Zurich. He was born in 1484 and died 1531. And he was a priest and an Augustinian, and he was upset with the Catholic Church for several reasons. He didn't like fasting during Lent. He thought that priests should get married. He was most concerned with images. He didn't like that people looked like they prayed before statues and paintings. Think of the Sistine Chapel. He wasn't happy with that. So his churches were very plain. Now he made an alliance with Martin Luther and other reformers. Reformers wanted unity against the Catholic Church. They didn't all have the same opinion on the Catholic Church, but they all wanted to break away from it. So he was actually upset that many reformers didn't stick together as much as they did. Now in 1531 there were wars in Switzerland between the Catholic and the Protestant states. So he actually fought as a soldier from Zurich, and he died there with about 500 other casualties. Now on to Martin Luther. Now, Zwingli was a Renaissance humanist, actually, at first, because he learned about that at a university there. And Luther, very much the same. Luther was born in 1483 and lived to 1546. So as a monk, he was upset with the Catholic Church, mostly with indulgences, and he is famous for nailing these 95 complaints, if you will, against the Catholic Church on a day that was a holy day, so you know that many people would go there to see it. So what exactly is an indulgence? It's basically a pardon for a certain type of sin that was sold by the Catholic Church in the late medieval period. And Martin Luther was upset, saying, basically people are paying for forgiveness. And nowhere in the Bible does it mention that paying will save you, that these priests have some certain connection with God to get you into heaven just because you pay them. So that was his main problem. He also had the Bible printed in the vernacular, which is like the native languages, as opposed to Latin, which helped him spread the word amongst his people. Now the Diet, not the diet of worms, met, and they were outraged with all these changes Luther wanted and what he was saying, what he was writing and publishing. So they excommunicated him, which basically meant he was kicked out of the Catholic Church. And excommunication also implied that he would not get into heaven. Now, of course, Luther didn't believe that, but to most people, that was really serious at those times, and for some, many today. Now, John Calvin was from France, and he was born in 1509 and died in 1564. France was very Catholic, and he had Protestant ideas. He was trained as a humanist lawyer, and he fled to Switzerland as a safe haven, knowing that he would get in trouble for these radical Protestant ideas in France. He wrote a book called The Institutes of the Christian Religion. These were Protestant ideas. Basically, if someone wanted to learn about the Christian faith, according to Calvin, they would read this book. It was almost, some would call it the Protestant Bible. Some wouldn't call it that, but just to give you an idea. His ideas were very close to Luther, and that they both believed that you could obtain salvation, which means you would go to heaven when you die, by faith. The Catholic Church thought you had to do some good deeds to get to heaven. And they said, no, as long as you have faith that you can get there, you will. So this was very similar for both of them. They did have a big disagreement on transubstantiation, which is when you have blood and wine in church, is that really the blood and body of Jesus, or is it symbolic? Now in 1536, Calvin set up a community in Geneva, and it was basically these people that all sort of had his ideas, Calvinists, if you will. And a consistory was a group of people that were to oversee that they were leading moral lives, making sure no one was doing anything wrong. Now, what they considered unmoral might be a surprise to some of you today, because one of the things was dancing. So all you dancers in VPA, the Calvinists would not be very happy and realize dancing back then was much different than dancing today, and they still found it immoral. Singing. Singing was, now you could do some church hymns, but any other type of singing, right? And then some more obvious ones: swearing, playing cards, drunkenness, things like that. Calvinists thus replaced Lutheranism as the most dynamic form of Protestantism, meaning the most unlike the Catholic Church. It was on the other end of the spectrum. He did get some opposition for his consistory in 1547, just so you know that not everyone was on board. Now, it says we learned about the English Reformation. We didn't. We're going to get to that later. Now, the Anabaptists were people that did not like the power that was held within the state, that your prince could tell you basically what religion you could be. They also believed religion should be voluntary. They saw all believers as equal. They would not take political office. They would not fight in wars. They said, why fight for a country when your real allegiance is to God? And this made them seem radical. What do you mean you won't fight for your country? And they were persecuted for it. And just so you know, Anabaptist means one who baptizes once again. So these people didn't believe until being baptized when you're older, when you can consciously make this decision. So many of them were persecuted, and many of them became what we know as the Pilgrims, which we're going to be thinking about soon with Thanksgiving. They were people that fled their persecution due to their religious beliefs. The first Anabaptist to be persecuted was Felix Mons by a Zwingli Protestant. So both Protestants and Catholics persecuted them. The Amish are a type of Anabaptists, but there are others. Now, you may be thinking, with all this going on, the Catholic Church was losing power, they were losing money. So how did they respond to this? And we're going to learn about that soon, but I first want you to think. If you were the Pope or an official in the Catholic Church, how would you respond to Zwingli, to the Calvinists, to Luther, to the the Anabaptists? Would you just let them go, or would you do things to try to keep them along? So your left-sided assignment is to make a 4-point plan, as if you were the Pope, on how to keep these Protestants on board. Be specific and give details. The password today is doggy. My daughter chose it. Write it on the bottom of your page and circle it, and we'll see you next class.